How do they make it in Miami? Is it any good? Miami Cuban, yeah.
It's not the same.
That's right.
Oh yeah, this is ours. This is definitely ours. And as you can see, it's awesome.
It's an amazing sandwich.
It is an amazing sandwich.
When you think of Cubans in Florida, you might not think of Tampa, but you should. Sure, today, Miami has the highest concentration of Cuban-Americans in the state, and the entire country for that matter. But back in the 19th century, before Miami was even a city, it was here in Tampa that the cigar industry boomed and the iconic Cuban sandwich was born. You know the one. Cuban bread, shredded pork, glazed ham, Swiss cheese, pickles, mustard, and, crucially important, specific only to Tampa, Genoa salami. And while Miami basks in its modern and well-deserved reputation as the capital of Cuban America, 400,000 Tampans wait patiently for their town to get its Cubano due. So we came down to Cigar City to do just that. We started in Ybor City. The neighborhood, often called Cigar City, is the soul of old Tampa's immigrant populations, and it's got a vibe all its own. Local tips: don't mind the roosters, watch out for streetcars and cobblestones, and never, ever accept a Cuban sandwich that's been made with mayonnaise.
Some places will put the mayonnaise on it, and that's not an authentic Cuban sandwich. It had to be able to sustain not being in air conditioned, so mayo would have gone bad.
Andrea Gonzmart Williams is the fifth-generation owner-operator of the historic Columbia restaurant on Ybor City's 7th Avenue. It makes one of the best Cuban sandwiches in Tampa. Turns out there's a very specific reason.
My grandfather, both of his grandfathers were cigar rollers in Ybor City. Cigar rolling in Ybor City was what made the Columbia restaurant so important because we got to feed all these great cigar rollers. So the Cuban sandwich in Tampa, you start with your Cuban bread, which obviously represents the Cubans. You do your ham, which represents the Spaniards. Then you go pork, Cubans. Then you have your salami, which represents the Italians. You top it with the Swiss cheese, which I always say kind of melts it all together, much like Ybor City is a melting pot. And then you top your bread off with yellow mustard and pickles, which represents the Germans. It's very important that you layer it in these orders so it hits your palate just so.
We ordered some expertly layered Columbia Cubans to go and headed across the neighborhood for lunch with the president of J.C. Newman, the last operational cigar factory in Tampa.
If you know anybody has had 3 or 4 generations living in Tampa, chances are their family worked in the cigar industry because those were the only jobs around. The cigar industry came to Tampa in 1886 from Key West. Vincent Martinez Ybor brought the whole industry to Tampa. They're looking for a place that had a port to bring tobacco in from Cuba, that was located close to Cuba, a place that had a railroad line to send cigars up to New York, and Tampa was the ideal spot. At its height, Tampa had 150 cigar factories. In the 1930s, was making 500 million cigars a year. And of those 42,000 licensed cigar manufacturers back in 1895, we're the only one left.
Wow.
Making cigars today the same way my grandfather made them on the same machines in the 1930s. People think of Cubans settling in Miami, but nobody has the heritage for cigars like Tampa does. Nobody even has the heritage for Cuban sandwiches like Tampa does. One of the keys to making a good Cuban sandwich is the bread itself. And this bread comes from La Segunda Bakery.
La Segunda is legendary in Tampa.
Up front, customers at this family-owned spot stop by for breakfast sandwiches, Cuban pastries, cafe con leche. But in back, a gigantic commercial bakery cranks out authentic Cuban bread for, well, everyone. Zone patrons, cross-country mail-order buyers, longtime accounts like the Columbia restaurant, and pretty much any cook in the city that wants to serve a real Cubano.
How long has La Segunda been around as a bakery?
102 years,
Wow,
since
so-
1915, yeah. Our bakers have been around, on average of 20 years, and so we feel they're a part of our family.
Every day is a different day with the dough. The bread is really like a sponge. It draws in the weather, and that's the trick of the bread. My name is Brian Valdez. I'm from La Segunda Central Bakery. I've been here for 30 years, and I love my job. I've been here since 17 years old. All my family grew up into making Cuban bread. I was a natural, really, but first it gets mixed. Then we give it air time, 30 minutes tub time in English, and then we end up rolling it. The trick to rolling is making sure that it's even, and then they will measure it in the back and put leaves on it. The leaves are the face of the bread, and it opens up the bread down the middle. It opens it up like a flower.
We use a palmetto leaf. That's the tradition my great-grandfather learned when he was in Cuba, and it's also got a little bit of a sour flavor.
So what's the move that you're doing when you do that there?
When we do that, we're banging it, we're stretching it, and making sure it's got a good length on it.
Gotcha.
So, and also we knock out hair out the dough, so they can really just measure and go. So we're at 6,000 a shift, 18,000 a day. We stay busy.
Yeah.
Miami's they don't have real Cuban bread to me, but they got the form of it, not the taste. There's no taste like that. There's no bakery compared to La Segunda.
The main thing is that it's got a soft, flaky crust so that when it goes on the press, it's still crunchy when you're biting into your sandwich.
What makes an authentic Tampa Cuban in your mind?
Definitely the bread. The bread has to be, it's known to Tampa from La Segunda.
What about lettuce and tomato?
Absolutely not.
No.
That was more of an American thing. No, not on this, because it messes it up. It's believed to have been from the Taino culture, where they take the cassava bread and what protein that they had at the time back in their days, they would stuff it. But the Cuban sandwich was made here in America. It was always a batido mamey and then a Cuban sandwich, almost like a milkshake and French fries and a burger. It's delicious. You can't let it go.
So good.
You can't let it go.
I'm so glad you ordered this.
Now you know.
Felicia Lacalle is a born and raised Tampan and an accomplished chef. Cubanos are a personal treat for her, and her very favorite one can be found at Aguila, an unassuming sandwich joint in West Tampa.
Aguila's is a restaurant that I've been coming to since I was a little girl. Mayito knows you. He knows what you already have. Everybody comes and has a regular. Are you having a regular? You can hear it. It's soul food. It's dope. It's delicious. It's amazing. Whatever the case may be, that's what we want.
That's fantastic. I mean, there's so much meat in here, but then that bite is just perfect.
It is perfect. You have the sweetness, you have the saltiness, the creaminess, the texture. It's just amazing. It's delicious.
I immediately went back for a second bite. I couldn't even help myself here.
I feel it. This is a treat.
You go to Miami. Miami has the glitz, the glamour. They've got TV shows about them. Everyone knows Miami. But Tampa was the originator of a very important part of Cuban cuisine in America. Do you feel like Tampa doesn't always get its due?
It doesn't, because a lot of people think, okay, Tampa, but that's where it came
Yeah,
from.
but in Tampa, it's really sort of where it found its identity.
It did find its identity, for sure.
Identity. What gives a city its identity? Like the Cuban sandwich itself, it's a concept that seems simple enough until you start peeling back the layers. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode of Food Groups you just watched. Do me a few favors if you would. Subscribe to our YouTube channel right here. Watch this video right here. And if you still got a little time, like and comment below.